Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council with hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. Stay informed on the top stories on life, family, and religious freedom. Get the facts, stand for truth.
Hello and welcome to the Family Beacon podcast with Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud from Minnesota Family Council. We are so excited that you have tuned in today on video or audio to hear or watch this episode, this very important episode where we're going to talk about some really important developments locally and nationally about the cause of life. But first, Grace, This is a very exciting moment because it was a year and a bit ago.
Happy birthday
to the Family Beacon podcast. We started in July.
We embarked upon this venture.
This adventure
together. Grand venture.
Yep. It's kind of like an adventure in Odyssey.
Is it?
Yeah.
What character would you be and what character would
I don't know
be?
what character I would be, but Grace is Eugene.
Wow.
So I really don't know much about Adventures
Me
in
neither,
Odyssey.
to be honest. So I've listened to it a few times. I don't even remember the characters' names. I just
remember Wit and Eugene. Those are the only two ones I remember. So we'll just go with that. But I wanted to say it's been
a real one.
Yeah. So I don't even know how many episodes we've done. We've done 15 episodes of the second season, and I think 23.
Yeah, or 25. So at least
23 or 25
23.
in the first season. So
that's a lot.
Well, yeah, we're cranking it out.
Yeah.
We are providing this content so that people across the state can find out what's going on, get a biblical perspective, and stand for truth on the issues that matter. So that's why we're here doing it. We're so excited for those of you who are along for the ride. We're going to keep pumping out this content. Hope it is helpful to you. Share it if it is. Share it with your friends and family.
Give us a 5-star review on Apple if you can.
Yes.
You can also leave us a message on Spotify if that's how you're listening. And go ahead and comment on YouTube too if you're watching on there, which you really should be because we film this for you guys. We don't just do audio.
That's true, and that adds so much extra work, but I think it's worth it. I love audio podcasts, but I love being able to see who I'm listening to. Okay, so let's get into it today.
Give them a rundown of the 3 things we'll be discussing, Moses.
Yeah. So we're going to first be discussing more vandalism of pro-life centers in Minnesota, which is so sad to see. And then, no, we're not going to talk about that first. First, we're going to talk about Minneapolis. The city of Minneapolis is attempting to become a safe haven for abortion. So we're going to talk about that. And it's interesting to juxtapose that. They're trying to make it so safe to have an abortion in the city of Minneapolis, while at the same time, these attacks on pro-lifers are happening across the state.
And we'll talk more about that.
And nobody's doing anything about it. And then our main topic for today, we'll both be discussing the abortion referendum in Kansas, which seems like a defeat for the pro-life cause, a temporary setback. So we're going to talk about that, see what that means. So let's jump into it.
Yeah. So tell me about Mayor Jacob Frey. He's the mayor of Minneapolis. And he recently, Mayor Frey.
It's spelled like Frey. It's pronounced Fry.
Okay. I actually did know that, but thank you. Somehow it's slipping out today.
Yeah, no.
It's early. Well, earlier than we normally podcast.
That's true. It's 10:22 a.m.
I was up at 5:30 though.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyways, so tell us about what he's up to. There was a recent message he gave to the general public on wanting Minneapolis to be an abortion safe haven. What's this all about, Moses?
Yeah, so as so often with this type of thing, it seems a lot more important than it actually is. So in the very remote possibility that a state like Wisconsin passes a law that criminalizes women who are seeking an abortion, which even pro-life states are unlikely to do because the best tactic is to go after doctors and providers. And
it's not only the best tactic, but personally, I just would not support criminalizing women.
No, yeah, I think that all pro-lifers recognize that women who seek an abortion are in a very hard place, and that the real crime is in the people who provide that service, and stopping that is the key to successfully creating an abortion-free future. So, but let's say that we had a pro-life state who was going to criminalize mothers. That's a bad thing. We don't support that. And then if in that remote eventuality, if that person traveled to Minneapolis to provide an abortion. And if then a law enforcement agency in Wisconsin or whatever requested the cooperation of the Minneapolis Police Department or the city attorney or anybody in the city administration, Mayor Fry's, I guess you would call it an executive order, would prevent city bodies of the city government from assisting in that. So first of all, this is A, going to do nothing, B, attempting to protect and foster a comfortable environment for the commission of an abortion, which is a murderous act. So the city of Minneapolis should be a sanctuary city for the unborn, rather than a sanctuary city for doctors who prey upon
Which
women.
our friends at Pro-Life Action Ministries Plan Action are working on
Yes.
for us.
That's true. We should have them on in a future episode.
Yeah, Representative Tim Miller, he is leading the charge on that. He's their new executive director for Plan Action's branch, their action branch. So super excited. I'll ask him if he wants to come on. I'm sure he would. He's awesome. He's one of my favorites.
Get to do that. Yeah, Representative Miller is a blast.
He's a gem, very pro-life. But yeah, the thing about this is what Mayor Fry is doing is it's kind of interesting because it's kind of like a pro-abortion flex. Like you say, it's not going to do too much, but it looks really good and really, really savvy for him. You know, it's like, oh, wow. But like from my knowledge, at least from reading through this like article from the Star Tribune, it seems like he's just saying this is what he wants to do, but he hasn't actually done it yet because he's going to deliver a budget address on August 15th. And then he's going to actually lay out actual plans.
Oh, I can't wait.
Because this is what he said. He said, the message to Minneapolis residents, the message more broadly to other cities and states around us is, if you need that basic healthcare service of abortion, we in Minneapolis are a safe haven. And so he did sign that executive order into putting new restrictions in place, but he's going to spell out exactly what those restrictions mean, what he's going to do to, quote unquote, do everything he can to make sure that people continue to have safe, secure access to healthcare in the community of Minneapolis. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Not thrilled. And something I just want to point out is like the messaging around this is so convoluted. The messaging they use is public health crisis.
Oh, right.
And abortion care.
Right.
And pregnant people.
Yeah, and the first thing he says, basic healthcare service.
I know.
Abortion's a basic healthcare service. In what universe is that true?
I know. That's just what is very disturbing. And the fact is they can get away with it, and they know they can because the media is on their side. So stay tuned. Read the Family Beacon blog for if you want to get actual news. And check out our friends at Alpha News, too. They also do some good reporting.
And they are covering, and they covered our second story of the day in a really a good way. So tell us about yet another pro-life center in Minnesota being vandalized and attacked.
So this is the fourth attack on a pro-life group in Minnesota just this summer, Moses.
Wow.
So they're really just spiking. And I mean, across our nation, at least 87 pro-life groups have been targeted with vandalism, threats, theft, and arson this summer. At least 87.
Wow.
So that's a lot. And here in Minnesota, four attacks so far. And we're only at the beginning of August. I mean, this is insane. So what happened, this is Alpha News reporting again, is a Bria Crisis Pregnancy Center in Minnesota, in St. Paul, was attacked. And I have personally been to this one. So what happened is the main entry area was smashed with a rock, and the words that we've come to dread and come to expect were painted across in red spray paint. If abortions aren't safe, neither are you. Which I think your point at the beginning of this episode stays true. I mean, like, there are these people like Mayor Fry that are fighting for abortion access and for making, quote-unquote, Minneapolis super safe, but he's not addressing the actual domestic terrorism that's happening.
Right.
The actual things that are hurting women that need these resources and deserve these resources, right?
Yeah.
And so this is just yet another attack, and the executive president responded. She did a press release on this. This was her statement, or part of her statement. She said, "Be assured that ABRIA, the Pregnancy Resource Center, responded quickly. Within 24 hours, we were able to reopen the clinic," which is amazing.
That is amazing.
"And welcome
because
clients
women
back
depend
on
on them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lives are at stake. She said, "Our team is working closely with law enforcement to investigate those responsible working for this crime." So that's good. And then she said, "Our St. Paul clinic is safe and secure, serving women and once more putting a choice for life within reach. It grieves us that people who misunderstand ABRIA's mission would turn to violence." And I think it's a good statement. One, like, nitpicky thing I would say is I don't think these people misunderstand Abria's mission. I think they perfectly do understand Abria's mission. That's why they're so against it. So I was a little surprised that she said that, but I mean, overall, I love pro-life groups. I love this Pregnancy Resource Center. But if I was giving that press release statement, I guess it's for comms. Whenever I see a statement, I'm like, oh, what would I change? You know, I would say.
I can see. I see where you're coming from. I'm sure what she's saying is, we are helping women, and they're misunderstanding that. She's putting a positive spin on what people are doing, and that may be true of someone like, let's say, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who recently said that she wanted to close down all pregnancy resource centers.
Except
that's just a stupid thing to say.
That pregnancy resource centers are torturous for women. I don't think she actually thinks that.
She's probably scoring political points as well, but she's certainly. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she actually believes this. You know, that it's not just political point scoring, although it is certainly that. And so she's the one who's misunderstanding this. But the people who, as you say, are engaging in violent action against Abria and other pregnancy centers, I think as you say, they do know very well that they are hurting the people who help women, and they're doing that because pregnancy resource centers are almost the biggest threat to the abortion industry.
Yep. So that's what happened here in Minneapolis. We will keep you posted, or that's what happened in St. Paul and Minneapolis, I should say. We'll keep you posted, of course, on other things that are happening on the pro-life horizon. I mean, we're here to give you the facts so that you can go out and stand for truth. This is not something, both of these stories are not something that mainstream media is going to capitalize on very much, especially Abria being vandalized. That's something that's going to definitely be on the DL. That's why Alpha News, I believe, is one of the only outlets that's picked it up so far. But we're here to give you those facts because it's important to keep up to date, to know what's happening, to know what the opposition is doing, what we're actually up against, and then we can move forward to fighting for a truly post-Doe Minnesota. So Moses, tell us about what happened in Kansas this week. Lots of people are talking about it, mostly pro-life activists. Some people maybe aren't aware. So can you just give us a quick summary of what went down, and then we can get into some deeper political analysis?
Yeah, so in 2019, the Kansas Supreme Court issued a decision, which is very similar to the Doe v. Gomez decision that we have in Minnesota that dates to 1995, which basically says, with no legal basis whatsoever, that the Kansas Constitution guarantees a right to abortion, just like the Doe v. Gomez decision says in Minnesota for the Minnesota Constitution. Now, this is, for one thing, it was really surprising for the people of Kansas who woke up one day and suddenly were told that their Constitution, which of course makes no mention of abortion, guarantees a right to it. So a group of Kansans got together. They created a coalition called Value Them Both, and they worked really hard to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot, and that's what went to the voters on August 2nd.
And our counterpart in Kansas, right, was leading the charge. So there's family policy councils in different states. It was Kansas Family Voice. Is that what they're called? I'm forgetting the precise name, but that sounds right. Because I think they were Kansas Family Policy Council or something like that, and then they changed their name.
I think that's right. Yep.
Which, that is a cool name. But yeah, so anyways, they were leading the charge. We've been in communication with them. We really respect their efforts and everything they did. They were up against something unprecedented, Dobbs being overturned right before they had this vote, right?
Yeah.
So they did so much good work, and we are looking at what they did, and we're going to learn a lot from what they did. So in no means is anything we're saying on here to say, they should have done this better. No, I mean, honestly, I think we would have acted very similarly if we had been in their shoes. We
absolutely would have, and so they did. We think that they did a great job, and the early numbers suggest the result of the ballot was something like 58% against 41% in favor, and that was disappointing and certainly something of a setback. I want to read the text of the constitutional amendment. So this is what Kansans were actually asked to add to the Constitution.
And most people voted against
this. And more people voted against this. I think it's good to see this. It's good to see what was actually being being
I'm glad
understood.
You're going to read that.
Because Kansans value both women and children, The Constitution of the State of Kansas does not require government funding of abortion and does not create or secure a right to abortion. To the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States, the people, through their elected state representatives and state senators, may pass laws regarding abortion, including but not limited to laws that account for circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, or circumstances of necessity to save the life of the mother. So this amendment, first of all, the problem that happened is suddenly Dobbs v. Jackson happened 6 weeks before this was already set. They couldn't change the wording or anything. And it's clear from the wording of the amendment that it refers, without mentioning it, refers to Roe v. Wade.
In America, where Roe is still the law of the land.
Yeah.
So that was problematic for sure. And they couldn't have foreseen that.
They could not have foreseen that. None of us really. I mean, we thought we knew it was coming, but until it actually happened, you can't count your chickens. So, this was we've seen pro-lifers across the country rejoicing. There are fewer abortions taking place now than there were 2 months ago because of this decision. And yet we also see the strength of the pro-abortion caucus, the people who...
And how deep their pockets are. So two things to note from Kansas. First of all, turnout was incredibly high. Yeah. It's the most pro-lifers turning out for anything ever in the state of Kansas. But also a lot of independents.
But also the most pro-abortion voters who've ever voted in an August election, which is usually a primary election. So it was a huge turnout on both sides. Both sides did a great job mobilizing their supporters. And this is the first chance for pro-abortion people after the Dobbs case to register their anger, and it's very important for them to call this a propaganda victory, to say, see, the people of Kansas don't want a Dobbs v. Jackson decision. They don't want abortion to be regulated heavily, and that's. I think that there's a way in which first of all, there was a lot of lying. there were ads going out that were comparing this amendment to a government mask mandate.
I know. So they were targeting conservatives. Yeah. It was like, I forget exactly what it was said, but it was like, you don't want more government overreach to happen, and right. It was targeted towards people that would normally vote pro-life, Yeah. So yeah, lots of money. We already know this. And then
also calling out tactics on our own side that are really bad. There was a group not affiliated with our allies in Kansas that was sending deceptive text messages saying, vote yes on the amendment to protect abortion rights, when actually a yes vote is what would have added protection of life to the Constitution.
I did not hear about that. That is insane. They thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, and it's also, they did it so stupidly.
It is so stupid.
The former Democratic governor of Kansas, Kathleen Sebelius, was one of the people who got this text. So this is a group tied to a former congressman.
That is extremely stupid. Are you kidding me? Because then if it reaches pro-life people, the pro-life people are going to be like, oh, let me...
Well, exactly. So it's just so deceptive and so shooting yourself in the foot. And the story of this broke the fact that this was unfortunately a conservative group that appears to have been behind this, broke the day of the vote. While polls, even just a few hours after the polls opened. So I actually do think that affected the result.
Of course.
I think they lost
it definitely did.
Independent voters because of that. And another problem here is the silent pro-abortion Republicans. So if you look at the numbers, it's clear that there are at least 80 to 100,000 people in Kansas who voted in the Republican primary on Tuesday in Kansas, and who also voted no on this amendment, who voted for the so-called right to an abortion. And so those people, we don't hear a lot about them. We don't hear a lot from them. In general, we think of Republicans as being the party that supports life. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. So first of all, we're a nonpartisan organization. We don't support either party in any type of official way. We're independent. Principles, not parties. However, when we see Republicans who are quote unquote supposed to be pro-life, and they're being really quiet about abortion sometimes. And they're and in this case, they're actually going to the polls and they're voting for. Some of them are voting for abortion to remain legally protected in Kansas, and so that's really sad to see.
Yep. So Moses, there's been a lot of speculation over the past 24 hours about other states that may attempt a constitutional amendment similar to Kansas. Do you, from your perspective, you follow elections pretty closely. That's one of your strengths. Do you think that this will affect pro-life initiatives like constitutional amendments going forward in other states?
I got an email, not just to me, but from an ally of ours in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, they're planning a life amendment. And Michael Geer, the president of the Pennsylvania Family Council, he sent an email saying, we are absolutely undeterred. We believe that a life amendment is the way to protect life in Pennsylvania. The Kansas result was, I believe he said, and as I already mentioned, the first the first possibility that pro-abortion radicals had to spend all this out-of-state money to try to deceive Kansans into thinking that abortion is good, that women need abortion, right? That's never true. And so at least one group that is planning a life amendment in the state of Pennsylvania is moving forward with that. And I think that's the right call, Grace. I don't think that pro-lifers should be deterred by this result. I think the circumstances are unique. The Dobbs v. Jackson case surprised a lot of people. It surprised a lot of people who've grown up in a universe where Roe v. Wade, a country, grown up in a country where Roe v. Wade is the law of the land.
Right.
They're used to that, and so there's this sense of, like
security.
Yeah, and I hate this line. You and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday over Slack. This line of it's horrifying to think that my daughter will have fewer rights than I did or my mother did.
I could rant about that. I will hold back.
Let's all say that I want Grace to absolutely unleash on that particular statement, and I hope that we will be able to do that in the future.
We are going to do that in an unwoke video. Yeah, so watch the wrap. Subscribe if you're not already. You can go to mfc.org/subscribe. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So okay. We will get a video to you where Grace absolutely downloads on that particularly stupid thing. But what I'll say about that now is, Americans love their idea of rights. That's why we have this idea of the right to choose versus the right to life. This oppositional relationship that's supposed to exist between choice and life, when in actual fact, when the reality of life exists, then there's no choice about it. So, but I'm preaching to the choir on that one.
Totally. So here's my thoughts on this whole thing. I think, we can all acknowledge that what happened in Kansas is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And it is depressing.
It's a setback. It's not a defeat.
And the thing we have to remember is, in a post-Roe America, we knew that if Roe v. Wade was overturned, which it has been, there would suddenly be 50 battlegrounds in the fight for life. We knew that. And this just goes to prove that point. Overturning Roe v. Wade wasn't it was a win for the pro-life movement for sure, but it was more of a compromise than anything. It was a compromise between pro-choice and pro-life people, I would say, because it didn't completely outlaw abortion. Right. It merely gave that decision back to the states. And so what we're recognizing is there are multiple battlegrounds. We will fight that fight in every single battleground, and we will fight until we win on every single battleground.
Absolutely.
And winning a battle does not mean we've lost the war. We won the battle with Roe v. Wade, which was a major battle, right? Watershed moment. We're going to win in many states. We're already winning in states. This doesn't discourage me. This doesn't make me less optimistic, honestly, because I think we can learn from the mistakes of Kansas while also learning about the good things that happened with that campaign. And this should only encourage us to press harder, to not grow weary, like Galatians 3:3 says, do not grow weary in doing good, because we know that we're not going to repeat history. We can look, these are the patterns in these states that are not succeeding on life. These are the patterns of the states that are, and then we're going to push really hard, and we are going to find that funding that we need to be fully funded to attack the pro-abortion giants, right?
Yeah.
Here's also my analysis as far as our next steps, right? So what do we do? That being said, we're going to take this fight to every state. We're going to keep on fighting until every life is cherished and protected. And I really do like the messaging of Kansas to value them both. I think that was the name of the amendment, which I really like that.
Absolutely.
Value them both, because it's not like, oh, value the baby amendment. It's value them both, which I think is really good.
Because pro-abortion people, if I could interrupt for a moment, pro-abortion people have spent the last 50 years creating an oppositional relationship between a woman and her own child. This closest relationship that God created. And we're trying to break that and trying to say, no, it's not about either or. It's about both, valuing them, loving them both. So anyway. Yeah.
So here's one thing that I think the pro-life movement really needs to emphasize, because our CEO said this, other CEOs of Family Policy Council said this: if we're explaining, we're not winning, we're losing.
Yeah.
So our position needs to be crystal clear for the people that are so out of check around this argument, like people not like you and me or our audience, people that aren't engaged. We need our position to be so clear, so simple, so easy to grasp, and so blatantly, obviously right.
Yeah.
So one thing that we've been losing on recently, and we saw this in Kansas, is because they had canvassers going up to doors, knocking.
Kansas canvassers,
and they would say, voting yes on this amendment, this pro-life amendment, would lead to laws requiring doctors to re-implant ectopic pregnancies. They literally would say that, and people would believe that. So one of the ways in which the pro-abortion side won in Kansas, and we're going to see this in other states too, unless we really get our messaging right and dead on, is this misinformation about ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, life of the mother situations. So we need to be crystal clear on what that is. We need to be so gracious, so loving, but so uncompromising on that.
Absolutely.
And we need to, I think, in every piece of legislation that we push looking forward, we always need to have a caveat for miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, life of the mother. We need to have caveats. We need to fully explain what we mean. Like, under this law, under this pro-life law, women would absolutely be able to seek miscarriage care, ectopic pregnancy care, care if the life of the mother is at risk, so if they need cancer treatment. Absolutely, that should be allowed. That should be a decision between a woman and a doctor and her husband. And so that's something that we can win on. We're not winning on right now because a lot of people just aren't educated on that. But we need to have our message be crystal clear on that so that the opposition can't weaponize that against us and say, look, these people are against women's health care and women's rights, and they want women to die, which is not true.
Right.
So that's something that we need to work on. We also need to work on just like defining our position more, because if we don't fully define our position, the opposition is going to define it for us, which is what we saw in Kansas.
Absolutely.
Something else we can do in a post-Roe America and a hopefully post-Doe Minnesota, as we're fighting for it, is highlighting the pro-abortion extremism, because we really do win when we highlight that, Moses. We see that all the time, because most Minnesotans and most Americans support safe, legal, and rare abortions. That's what they support. They don't support it on demand.
A plurality.
Yeah. They don't support it on demand. They don't support it fully taxpayer funded, usually. They usually pretty moderate. They support it like up to 12 weeks. That's what the plurality, you could say, would support. But when we say, hey, the pro-abortion side actually wants it on demand, fully taxpayer funded, and no regulations up to the moment of birth, like in the birth canal.
Yeah.
Most people do not support that. So
when they and this is not Grace making this up, guys. Like when they have votes, especially at the federal level, they've had several votes on this in recent years on a partial birth abortion ban, or the Born Alive Protection Act is what it's called. So, Grace, with the Born Alive Protection Act, even someone like Governor Walz, who likes to paint himself as a moderate on this issue, he voted against protections for infants born alive during an abortion, a late-term abortion. And so this is the real bloody-minded extremism of our opponents, and we need to focus on that. We need to focus on the fact that there is no point in pregnancy where our opponents acknowledge a right to life. It's disgusting. There's no other word for it. It's morally abhorrent, and yet we don't see the discourse on that. The playing field is not level. The media establishment, many figures in both political parties, do not want to talk about the right to life. Many figures in both political parties, I'll target the Republican Party in particular, many of them would rather die than discuss abortion at any type of substantive level. And that also is disgusting, because they're choosing not to stand up for the most vulnerable people in our society. And as Grace says, we win when we focus on the extremism, the horrifying, abhorrent extremism of our opponents on this issue.
Yep. We win when we do that. We win when we focus on the humanity and of the preborn and the sanctity of their life, and when we focus on what abortion really is, and when we focus on loving mothers, which is one of the things that the pro-life movement does best. So that's how we win. We're going to do that. We will keep you posted here on the podcast.
Kansas is not the end. Kansas is a setback.
Yeah.
Kansas is the beginning of what I hope to be a
pro-life revolution.
A pro-life revolution around the country, where we see each state move towards protecting life. And I truly believe we'll
America
see that.
is trending pro-life. There's no doubt about that. So we are going to continue to fight these battles, and we will win the war. Make no mistake about that. Moses, as we close out this episode, this has been a great pro-life episode. Love the pro-life content recently. It's been so fun because that's my favorite issue to talk about, you know. But it's cool after Dobbs because it seems to be our highlight almost every podcast, which I love. But I want you to tell me what you're reading right now.
All right. Well, I think I mentioned the last time you asked that I was reading Anna Karenina, by Leo Tolstoy, and I finished it yesterday.
Okay.
And it was beautiful.
You like it now?
I love it.
Give me a fist bump, dude. That's great. Oh, ouch.
Oh, sorry.
Knuckles of Steel. Okay, last time I remember you said it was okay, but you were only like a few chapters in or something.
I was. Yeah. You know, there's three different kind of storylines in it. Like there's Anna and Vronsky, and there's Lievin and Kitty, and then there's Oblonsky and Dolly.
Yep.
And I was telling my wife Brianna yesterday, it's almost like, I don't believe in purgatory, but it's almost like hell, purgatory, heaven in terms of those three relationships.
Hey, that's interesting.
Between people, and I could talk about that for a long time, but just the relationship between Lievin and Kitty, this devoted husband and wife, and how they struggle but learn to live together, learn to love and trust each other. I thought that was a beautiful depiction of a marriage in a book that's not known, that is most well known for being a depiction of another couple in adultery, in an adulterous relationship. So I think, and it's also a deeply Christian novel. So I'll stop there. I really could go on. And I just started a book called Ronald Reagan, the American President.
Oh, that sounds
by Larry
really
Schweikert,
interesting.
I think is his name. It's an interesting book so far. It's a little bit, it's comparing Ronald Reagan to Donald Trump almost like every few pages. It's very favorable to Reagan and Trump, and the comparisons are interesting. One thing I didn't know, and I really will stop now, is that Reagan was raised in a Christian home. I really didn't know that, in like a fervently evangelical home, and like he was teaching Sunday school at age 15. Like it was real for him. I'm not sure I knew that. I think I had heard people say that George W. Bush was the first born-again Christian to be president, but I think it's clearer that Ronald Reagan was. There was a time when he said to his mother, who was like the rock of faith in their home, "Mom, I want to give my testimony. I want to be baptized." So I think that's really interesting, and so this guy's certainly arguing that Reagan's faith has been underemphasized. So cool. I haven't read other sources to confirm that, but anyway, I'll keep you guys posted. What are you reading, Grace?
So I finished 2 books yesterday, actually.
Oh, wow.
One is The Power of Habit.
I guess I'm not making you work hard enough.
I don't know. I feel like I make myself work really hard.
That's true.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm like cracking the whip on my back.
That's not good.
True.
Like those monks in Monty Python.
Self-infliction. Okay, so I read The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Work.
Is that Covey?
Charles Duhigg?
No, never mind. Okay.
It was good. I will say I really liked the chapter on why. I liked the first chapter, just like what habits are, how they're made, how they're formed, how you recreate new ones, how if you have a habit, it never goes away. You have to fill the void with something else to like fill that habit hole or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then I also really liked the chapter on why social activism works in certain like why it works in these ways, why it doesn't work in other ways, like why some have been successful, like why there were multiple people in history that like tried to stop the segregation that was happening. And so why why were some people so successful? Why was there a turning point with Rosa Parks on the bus when people had done that before, right? But why was her situation successful? And one point that he made was it was successful because she was very well connected in her community and very well liked. So when they tried to make an example of her, all the people that were her friends were like, I don't think so. Sure. And she had friends in all the different areas. That was like the first thing. Then there were like two other things that made her be the pivotal moment. Like the watershed moment, you could say. But anyways, I liked those 2 chapters a lot. The other chapters, kind of boring in my opinion. I don't know. It was just like a lot of history talking about famous CEOs, Facebook CEO, and how they were successful with
Mark
habit.
Zuckerberg, riveting reading,
I don't know. So I skimmed honestly the rest of the chapters. I'm sure they would have been interesting, but I just, yeah. So I would give it 3 stars overall because I did like those chapters a lot, but I rate my books on if I'm bored with them or not. I don't know if that's a good rating, but yeah, so 3 stars. And then I read Rilla of Ingleside, which is the last book in the Anne of Green Gables series. Really? It's about her daughter, which is really good. I've read it before, but I reread it because it's just so good. It's like this thick, so it's a fast read. I read it in 2 days, so it's good. It's just it's about the World War, and basically like there's a really beautiful passage in there, Moses, actually, where it talks. The daughter receives a letter from her brother, who's gone off to fight in the war, and it's just. Like, he knows he's going to die tomorrow. Like, he has this feeling, so he sends her the letter, and he does die. And he says...
Convenient how that works in
fiction. Right. But anyways, he talks about how he's not afraid, and he's glad to sacrifice as long as the women at home, and he's writing to his sister, the women at home keep faith, that they rebuild what needs to be rebuilt. If they continue to fight this culture, if they continue to love well, to live wisely... to like be fruitful, to do what they should do in rebuilding culture. It's a beautiful passage. Like
sounds pretty based.
I cry every time when I read it. Like it's beautiful. And then she gets another letter from her other brother, similar things but slightly different. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful call to patriotism of like the sacrifices that have been made for our country and the absolute importance of the next generation and being in the home and the role that women do have, that stay-at-home mothers do have. And she wasn't a mother at this time, the character, but it's just, I think we underestimate the power of family sometimes and the power of like actually loving our country because a lot of people don't love our country. So those are the books that I've been reading. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Family Beacon podcast. We always give you the facts so that you can go out and stand for truth, so that you can stand for life, because we need your voice more than ever before. Don't forget to share this episode, to share the Family Beacon podcast with your friends. Talk about us, tag us on social media. We would love to hear what's been impacting you this week. What story was your favorite to hear about? With that, I will say we will see you next week here on the Family Beacon podcast. Thanks for listening to or watching this episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you're up to date on life, family, and religious freedom. You can follow us on Instagram at MN Family Council and subscribe to us on YouTube to watch our content. Get the facts, stand for truth.